This DJNTV show is sponsored by DJ Event Planner, Electra Voice, DJ Trivia and DJ Bingo, ProX Direct, NLFX Pro, Promo Only, Odyssey Cases, Perfect Portals, JMOZ Lighting, Instant DJ Requests, and our DJNTV Insiders. This is John Young from DJNTV. Thanks for watching. Tuesday Night with Ben Stowe. 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 Nah, let's just go.
Welcome to DJNTV and Tuesday Night with Ben Stowe. Now introducing the one and only Ben Stowe.
Yeah, baby! Yeah.
Good evening and welcome back to Tuesday Night with Ben Stowe. This is the night where questions are answered, lives are saved, and people will rejoice. Yeah.
I mean, questions will be answered anyway.
Saved, rejoice. Come on.
Okay.
Okay, let's go. We'll go with that. It will be awesome and epic. So tonight we're going to dig into subwoofers. We're going to be kind of going into the deep side of the technical pool a little bit when it comes to subwoofers, because there's a lot of questions and a lot of misinformation, and this is our time. Right. This is our time to put that together and make it all happen. So our crack team has put together the subwoofers for the demonstration. So this is going to be great, and we're going to be able to do a lot of great things with these. It'll be fun.
Yeah, I was just, let's see, beaming properties are impacted when a wavelength approaches the diameter of a cone. So let's see, what's the diameter of those?
I'd say about, 3/4 of an inch maybe.
I'm going to need to get out a calculator.
We'll work on that. But, so we just want you guys to know that, with the upcoming season starting, we just wanted to get our crack team on.
We have spared no expense.
No expenses are spared.
We are back, baby.
Yeah.
Tuesday Night with Ben Stowe and John is back, and we have an amazing props department.
Oh, they were working on that.
Graphics department.
They've been working crazy on that, so that'll be
wait till you
a big
see
part.
my graphics later. They are so bad. I'm already going to apologize. Listen, you tried to draw a sine wave by hand with a mouse. Anyway, so... but John, if it's okay with you, I'd like to, since we haven't done a show in a long time, and I am just very, very fresh off some very bad news, actually. So I want to try to make that into a positive, if I can, by recognizing, and I don't know if dedicating is the right word. I think maybe just recognizing a very dear friend in the industry, and to me personally, fellow sound guy, avid viewer, and if you knew him, just one of the best human beings really on the planet. I don't say that lightly, and if you didn't know him, you truly missed out. So my dear friend Neil McKinney just passed away a couple days ago, so I guess it's fitting that our first show back, and he would have loved this topic, by the way. He was straight up nerd just like me. Actually, there's a picture on my Facebook of him wearing a geek t-shirt, one of our geek t-shirts with me, but so I'm just, if you'll all indulge me, and I guess viewers, you don't really have a choice. I mean, you could click away, but that would be rude.
That would be rude, and we don't want to be rude.
Please don't. Please let me tell you for a moment. Just please indulge me for a moment as I tell you about Neil. I've got a great photo that I don't think either of us ever thought was going to see the light of day. This was about 2 o'clock in the morning after a festival we were both mixing sound at, and the only thing open was Taco Bell. And a lot of people who knew Neil, in his hometown down by Atlanta, that person, and I knew Neil pretty much always on the road. He was always away from family and out with us. And I'm not saying he was a different person, because he wasn't. That's my point. But you're in a different set of circumstances, and you get to maybe do a little bit different things or whatever. And that's how I really came to know what a tremendous person he was. This picture, I think, actually was for his wife Janice, who he talked about constantly on the road, which I think says a lot about a guy. He really constantly talked about his wife while he was away from her. And I guess he wanted her to know he was eating healthy. So
That's Taco Bell at 2 a.m.
So we took this picture. We'd both just gone to the hotel and taken showers after working an 18-hour day, and went and got tacos. So we weren't really primed for public appearance. But so I have one other. I talked myself out and in and out and back into this story. I told it to a friend who lives near Neil but never got to know him, and I thought, you know what? Maybe I should tell this story. So it's ironically, it's from that same festival. And, those who've worked festivals, you know that catering is a very sacred time, especially for those of us who are carrying like double loads, mixing sound, system teching. Neil and I were, we had pretty heavy loads during that festival. So our time to eat and relax was very, very far and few between. And this was during the breakfast meal. We're in staff catering right now, and we're just getting ready for what's sure to be a crazy day of, about 10 bands rolling through on a tight schedule. And anyway, national acts, and this kid shows up, and we have no idea who this kid belongs to. Like, could have been a volunteer's kid or a vendor's kid or an exhibitor, or we have no idea.
Sure.
But this kid just shows up, somehow has access to staff catering. So, and this kid shows up and gets a plate of breakfast and sits down next to Neil. Again, we didn't know the kid, and the kid didn't know us, so maybe just great instincts on this kid's part, I guess, sits down next to Neil. And despite being pressed for time and not having a lot of, time to ourselves, Neil's first reaction is to start cutting this kid's pancake. And I think that's, I talked myself out of telling this story, because I was like, there's no way I'm going to get through it without like bawling my eyes out, but I think I made it. But I think that just says, you can see the look on his face. He didn't know I was taking a picture, and I'm so glad I did. This was last year, and I didn't know this was the last festival we'd ever worked together.
Sure.
But I think it just really captures that moment of what a special human being he was. He just, no second thought whatsoever, just cut the pancake. So viewers, thanks for letting me share that.
No, thank you for sharing that, because I unfortunately never got a chance to meet Neil face to face and such. So as people have been sharing things, it's obviously a missed opportunity on my part that we just didn't.
It truly is, John. It truly is. And what I think is really cool is I'm now finding a new network of friends that knew Neil, but we didn't really know each other. We're getting to know each other through Neil, because he touched so many people.
Sure.
And I do feel very fortunate. He had a goofy sense of humor. He had a smile that lit up a room. He had an incredibly kind heart, as you saw in the picture. That just was, the thing is about that, it wasn't that remarkable for him. That's just it. I'm glad I took that picture, because it wasn't all that remarkable or out of character. I just happened to think, what a cool moment. I was kind of wondering who the kid was,
Yeah.
So yeah, I feel lucky that, I had the chance to, be his colleague, his partner in crime, mixing sound, his roommate. Many times we, shared hotels or campers or, whatever. And I've got these memories, but that's all I've got now is the memories.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Well,
good story.
So he would love for us to talk about subwoofers and physics. Many nights, even though he was a few years older than me, he had a lot of energy, and he would want to talk about these sorts of things late at night. And I'd be like, dude, go to bed. We got a show tomorrow. So, Neil, we'll teleport this straight up to heaven to you. We'll talk about physics.
So let's kind of jump into it. When it comes to subwoofers, there's a lot of misinformation, obviously, and we're going to hit some of that tonight. If you guys have got questions, put those into the chat. And if you're watching it on Facebook, in the chat, there should be a link to the YouTube. That's the main chat that we'll be watching. You can put something in Facebook, and I should be able to see it. But if you put it on YouTube, I'll be able to say, hey, Chris had a question. Well, Chris doesn't have a question yet. But Chris, when you have a question,
come on, Chris, give it the program.
Put it in there. So thank you guys for being with us this evening. So that'll be the area. So let's kind of start with the basics of what a subwoofer does. So that way we can get kind of a baseline to start from.
Baseline.
Yeah, like that.
See what you did there.
Like that.
Well
like
played,
that.
sir. You've been working. You had all summer.
All
and that's
summer.
What you came up with.
That's why you had that. That's why there's an itinerary of topics for the fall. So that way I could spend 3 months doing nothing but thinking. Okay,
I got to be honest. I'm so proud of you. I love that production schedule. That's just the viewers. You have no idea. Anyway, just so. As the name implies, subwoofer, if we think about that, a woofer is going to produce a certain frequency range, a low frequency range. We've got woofers, mid-ranges, and tweeters, right? A subwoofer is designed to produce those frequencies below that. Really, very often in the DJ realm, subwoofers are producing frequencies of 100 hertz and below. My subwoofers, for example, are crossed over at 80 hertz. So they're going 80 hertz and below. So it's those really low frequencies. Some of them even, subsonic, right? We're feeling them more than hearing them. And in fact, I just got a great compliment at the same festival that Neil was not able to attend this year, as he was in the ICU. But some people came up and said, "Wow, that bass just hit me in the chest," and I just love that. I love feeling the bass. So we're going to talk a bit about how you achieve that tonight.
So you were talking frequencies. Does the frequency change or differ on what a 12-inch subwoofer compared to an 18-inch subwoofer can produce or handle?
Well, there's a phrase that I don't know if I coined it or stole it, so whatever. But there's no replacement for displacement, and what we're talking about is the size of the driver. So can a 12-inch sub reproduce frequencies the same as an 18-inch sub? Yes, just not as efficiently or as effectively, right? You could take a 12-inch sub in your car and it'll be, earth-shattering. We don't use 12-inch subwoofers in concert tour for a reason, right? So I guess maybe the non-technically correct but fundamentally correct answer is to say, no, they don't do the same thing. They don't produce the same frequencies. You're going to get lower frequencies, and you're going to move more air with larger drivers.
Sure. So when you're talking your large drivers that can go to subharmonic levels, are you running a consistent, so are they all the same cone size throughout all of your subwoofers, or do you use sometimes like we do in tops where there's the tweeter and then there's the more of a mid-range? Is that in the subwoofer arena too, or are they all the same?
Well, I think if we make the question complicated enough, we could probably find any answer we want here. I'm going to just give you a simple answer and say my sub drivers are all the same.
Okay.
My system is engineered to operate a certain way, and I like that consistency. I also like that ease, because as we start mixing and matching things, we have to be a little bit more thoughtful about how we're doing that. How do we get these things to interact with each other properly? And now, we've all seen the memes or whatever, meme worthy, certainly pictures of, people just cobbling stuff together to move a ton of air. It's not the plan, right? For me, I want to do it as efficiently as possible and as musically as possible. So, by keeping the math simple, it's much more efficient for me to do that.
Sure. Excellent.
Now, when I say keeping the math simple, some people are going to call me out on that later, because they're going to say, well, this isn't all that simple. But it doesn't have to be hard. And I think my point is, don't make it harder than it has to be either. Let's not make this harder on ourselves when we get into some of these sub-arrays and things.
So when it comes to subwoofers, what is really the most important part that a person should be thinking about? Is it the power of the amp pushing it? Is it the size of the cone? Is it the placement within the room? Is it the material that the box is made out of? What is kind of the hierarchy there for importance?
Well, I would say that it's greater than the sum of the parts of those things. It's all things. It's, you know, it's the motor power, it's the excursion, it's the power handling, it's the, you know, the stiffness of the cone, it's the construction of the box. But given that list, if I had to pick one, believe it or not, I would say the placement in the room. And you know, we'll look into that a little bit here, maybe with some pictures, and we'll start to see things what we call moding, room moding, where the room plays some effect on your sub. But I guess that's an oversimplified answer to say that it's any one of those things. It's really all of those things.
Sure.
You know.
You mentioned moding, and that's really a big direction I want to kind of get into tonight. And thankfully, you've got some pictures that will help show that. Not quite as effectively as the prop department, but you know, we'll suffice.
Hey man, I did what I could do.
Yeah. So for someone who doesn't, what is moding? When you refer to moding, how would you define that?
So in the simplest of terms, and I wish I had a graphic prepared for this because I have an immediate picture in my brain I'll try to share with you. Sound travels in waves, right? And each wave has a peak and a trough. You know, we have the rarefaction and compression of the molecules in air, right? So what we want, or what we don't want, is for peaks and troughs to line up. Well, maybe we do want it, but more on that later. So, sorry, how about a straight answer, right? Okay, on with it. Here we go. So, what happens is these sounds that are produced by the subwoofer, these waves, can hit a boundary in the room and reflect from the boundary and then interact with the directly emitted sound from the sub. And the oversimplified answer here is that as you walk around a room, you'll hear places where there's lots of bass and places where there's no bass. Mm-hmm. And that's what we're talking about. We're talking about power alleys and nulls, and that's a direct product of the moding. Now, I'm not going to show any graphs that show a room's effect. I'm going to use multiple subwoofers, but the outcome is the same. We'll see that actually adding subwoofers can cause a loss in bass too. And that's where the math comes in.
So one time when we were talking about this, and for those of you who have been with us for a while, we have hit subwoofers once, twice, three, okay, a lot of times before. We've talked about the idea of if a person throws a couple of rocks into water and you get the little waves, and where that moding really, I think, is displayed where those waves interact and intersect with each other, and all of a sudden you have chaos.
100%.
So that chaos
Absolutely.
in our audio, what does that sound like?
Well, in this case, there's a couple different things that we would hear. Most often we would hear these power alleys and nulls. Now, a quick lesson on waveforms is that, you know, frequency dictates wavelength, and wavelength, of course, dictates where this occurs. So this will occur at one frequency in a different place than it does at another frequency. So it's very complex when you start to dig under the hood, and I want to keep it at a high level. But basically, that's what you'll hear, is you'll hear lots of bass and no bass. There are other things that we can hear. We've talked about this in some of our top placement shows, and certainly we talked about it in our cardioid sub show, where that's an intentional thing. We're doing that on purpose. We're canceling frequencies behind the sub and not in front, and that's done with. So actually, I have a little graphic for you for that.
Nice.
You know, but some of the other things we could hear is like what we would call a phase shift. You know, and phase is really a fancy word for time, but this is when the troughs and the you know, the peaks and the valleys of the wave don't align at 180 degrees, but maybe at 270 degrees or something, where they're creating, you know, more of a shift as opposed to a complete cancellation or complete summation.
Sure, and we'll have to get into the phase and talk about that a little bit because of the.
Yeah, we're not going to get much into phase with subwoofers, which is good. Viewers, you're welcome. Subwoofers are in a lot of ways simpler than top boxes, and the reason is these low frequencies have longer wavelengths, so it's a little bit easier to digest. You know,
would it also be because the subwoofer's only handling so many frequencies compared to a top box, which is handling a much wider range? I'm guessing that would also be a cause of ease, for lack of a better way to describe it.
Yeah, absolutely. We're talking about a range. In my case, we're talking about a range from 30 hertz to 80 hertz. It's only 50 hertz. You know, whereas you start talking about, your top boxes, even the high frequency driver might be going from 2 kilohertz to 20 kilohertz, you know? So it really depends on the box construction. But anyway, yeah. So I think that's a good way. That's a good answer too.
Very good. Let's get into some graphics, and then we can kind of work our way around a little bit as we're talking about the output of our subwoofers and where that sound is going and what it's doing.
Let me think about what I want to do first. Let's just do this one. I apologize for not having a plan, but if it's your first time watching the show, that's pretty much how I roll. What we can see on the right-hand side is 2 blue rectangles indicating our subwoofers, and we see a red line which indicates the coverage of our subwoofer at a certain frequency. Okay, and what the frequency is right now isn't important, so don't worry about that. We'll get into that in a minute. But what we can see in the polar graph to the left is we've added 2 more subwoofers, and our pattern actually got more narrow. Our substack got wider, but our pattern got narrower. So this sub-array is beginning to create directivity.
Interesting.
So we're about to get really fun here. I think you'll hear people say that high frequencies can be steered and low frequencies cannot, and that's not true. Not true at all.
So what would cause that? I mean, I'm envisioning as we talk about, bass being, omnidirectional type of a situation, it would make a logical sense to follow that right picture was there. But what caused that more narrowing of the field in that left picture?
In the simplest of words, probably time. And we'll see when we adjust some delay settings on drivers how we can begin to change the way that pattern responds.
Okay.
And again, this will look different at different frequencies. And I've got some software we'll model some stuff and we'll play with that a little bit. And interestingly enough, you'll notice the software will actually be adding delay calculations for me. I'm going to have to go in and undo it because it's trying to help save me from myself.
Sure.
The software's like, you don't want to do that, really.
It's going to be bad.
But I do because I want to show you.
It's not optimal.
So I think actually I was going to maybe save this one a little bit later, but I don't know that I will. I think let's we're already wet. Let's go swimming.
Sounds great.
Let's dive into the deep end of the pool. Okay, so what you see here is now a line of a lot more subs, each one indicated by a different color, in pairs, right? So we got a pink pair, turquoise pair, red pair, green pair, right? Mm-hmm. And we've got more lines, and you can see that the blue line represents 40 hertz, the red line represents 60 hertz, and the green line represents 90 hertz.
And in each sub in this particular is in essence the same sub with the same, everything's the same except the frequency graph.
Yes.
Subs are identical.
Subs are getting the exact same signal at the exact same level at the exact same time.
Okay.
And this is the pattern they produce. So we can see that, if I was standing directly in front of that pink sub on the end, I actually wouldn't be getting a lot of 90 hertz at all.
Yeah.
That pattern's really pretty tight. It's very, very directionalized. And like I said earlier, because wavelength is a product of frequency, the lower the frequency, the longer the wavelength, we can see that this is different for these various lines. Now, watch what happens. We're going to add some delay settings to these subs, and we're going to do it on purpose. These graphs, courtesy of Electro Voice, by the way. I blatantly just took what they already had made because I was like, you know what? Why reinvent the wheel?
Exactly.
I'm making graphics. So thanks to their super nerd engineers, there's actually a subwoofer guide that I have. I'll be happy to send you. It's really interesting reading if you're Neil or me. Or
I was going to say real interesting reading. Ben, you need to, yeah.
It's a real cover-to-cover gripper, let me tell you. Anyway, let's add some time here. And you can see what happened to our pattern now. It's nearly perfect coverage, like a single subwoofer, of course, just much louder because we have the summation of all these subs. But if you look, you can see that on our far outsides, it's 12 milliseconds, then 7, then 4, then 2, then 1, and repeating symmetrically to make this into this. So we've just changed the time.
Wow. That's all. That's all it took is just because of those sound waves that were trying to go left and right, basically, and interfering with each other.
Yep. It says, okay, we're going to align everybody up here, get everybody on the same page, so to speak. Now let me show you another graphic that I made with my terrible sine wave, and anybody that laughs at me will get blocked. And can we do that? Can we block people? I don't know. You know what? Honestly, laugh at me. I don't care. Do I look like a guy who cares if you laugh at him? I'm wearing a shirt that says "Come to the math side." You know, like,
there's that. I
don't care. All right, and you know, if Neil taught me anything, it's to laugh at yourself. So go ahead and laugh at me. I'll laugh with you. Anyway, here is my fancy drawing I made about 2 o'clock this afternoon. And what I've done is I drew a top box and I made each driver a different color, my tweeter in red, my woofer in green, and my subwoofer in blue. And I did not align the boxes physically. Now we can align things physically or electronically. All right. In this case, they're not aligned physically. And I very painstakingly drew these sine waves with them. Yeah. Anyway, get the point, right? And we can see where this shift is. They're really not aligned at all. So at the crossover frequency, whatever that is, 100 or 80 or whatever your crossover frequency is, some go up to as high as 120, we're going to have some problems. So this system should be time aligned. And that's one of the things that I see people making mistakes at, particularly as they move into the concert realm or the medium production realm, is they just continue to feed power into their subs, and they don't understand that the problem will just increase with the power.
Sure.
The problem is time. You know, they're like, where is all my bass going? Why is this not tight or punchy? So they just keep slamming power into it until something burns up. When the problem was time. You know? So
now with most of our speakers, if we are running our ETX sub and our ETX top, and we're using the pole and such as you typically would, now that is going to be, I would assume, time aligned because that's the way it's designed.
Yeah, you're not going to have any real noticeable, and now, of course, if we take a 12 or a 15 and we put them on the 18, they're different sizes, so they might be slightly different in terms of where that driver spacing is relative to the sub. But you would be so very, very close. It wouldn't really matter. If you're asking yourself, okay, well, how do I align these on the ETX, for example, there is a delay setting in the box, and you can choose meters or feet, or you can also choose milliseconds. And it's about 0.89 or close enough to say 0.9 milliseconds per foot. So if that was off by a foot, you would want to align it by about 0.89 milliseconds. And so again, what we're talking about in that case is it's not going to make, I mean, we're getting into surgery at that point, right? You know?
Sure. Can you bring that picture back up again, Ben, for me, please?
Surely can.
So one of the common discussions that we have out there when it comes to subwoofers, and if we're doing a wedding, and people talk about taking that sub, and instead of the sub being slightly ahead of the tops, is to actually back it up and put it against a wall behind us.
Yep.
So now that is then potentially from your graph here showing that they're out of a line, that could even give us a bigger alignment issue if you move it 8 feet behind you type of a situation.
Massive. And it's interesting that you chose that number because I actually made a slide for Mobile Beat several years ago for my Audio Myths Busted, Mythbusters, for my Audio Myths Busted presentation, and I talked specifically about that because if your subwoofer is 8 feet in front of the wall, I mean, honestly, I wish we couldn't have planned this better. That's a great number you picked. So if your subwoofer is 8 feet from the wall, your distance to the wall is 8 feet, and your distance back is another 8 feet, which is 16 feet, which just so happens to be about the wavelength of 70 hertz. So close enough, you know. So what do we have? We have this wavelength coming back at 70 hertz, and now we have the ripples interacting, right? We could be creating our own problem because of reflections from the wall. So solution one, move the sub back to the wall. Okay, good, fine. Now we have summation, maybe some boundary loading from the wall, but now we're way off with our tops.
Sure.
So the only solution there is then to delay the tops back 8 feet, or 8 times 0.89 milliseconds, whatever that works out to be. That would be just fine, I think, in a musical setting for sure. It might be a little bit weird if you talk on the mic and people are looking at you. They might hear you just a little bit different, you know, but, you know, we've got some differences in speed of light and speed of sound anyway that, I mean, at some point your lips aren't going to match the sound. This is just going to make it a little bit worse by the tune of,
Sure.
7 milliseconds or whatever. But yeah, that's one way you could certainly deal with that.
Yeah, that would definitely be something that a lot of people have gone to that idea of putting the subs back, that 8 feet, 10 feet, whatever it is, against the wall or near the wall. And then all of a sudden they're like, but I'm getting a lot of boom, but it just is not what I was hoping for.
You're going to lose that definition and punchiness and, and things, particularly at the crossover point. So yeah, just stick a tape measure on it and put that number into your ETX tops and or your digital processor if you've got one, to say, okay, I need to delay my tops back now to be in line with the subs. Now, it's not the distance from, to be clear, it's the distance from driver to driver.
Okay.
So don't measure to the wall, because your sub's driver is not at the wall. It's probably 2 feet in front of the wall, depending on the size of your sub. So it's from driver to driver, the acoustic center.
So, okay, so let's continue. Say we have 2 subs, and I have my 2 top speakers out in front of me, and I want to put the subs up against the wall. How would you recommend I do that? And then how would I set the delay when I have two tops?
Well, if you're going to do 2 subs, like both against the wall, I'd say just put them together, because you're going to get that summation. And this might be an opportune segue into taking a look at some of these live graphics here. But at that point, then I would measure that distance from the tops to the subs, and that's no longer perhaps a straight line. If your subs are maybe clustered together in the center between your tops, now it's a bit more of an angled line.
So would you measure?
You do is going to be better.
Would you measure straight out as where the plane of the tops are, or would you measure to the cones?
I'd go cone to cone.
Okay.
I'd draw, basically pull like a string between the 2 cones and take that distance. Now, of course, there's an old saying, if it sounds good, it is good. There's that. There are some really cool tricks that I've seen for time aligning systems, inverting the subs and adjusting your delay time till you have maximum loss of the crossover frequency on an RTA, and then re-inverting it so it's back to regular polarity, and then you get the maximum boom, right?
Sure.
There's some other ways to do this, but by far for DJs, the simplest thing is going to be to measure it and just put that number into the speaker and let it do everything else,
So if I don't have ETX that has that delay capability or whatever technology built in for that, whatever brand, are there devices that would be able to allow me to do that and adjust that?
Absolutely. Oh yeah, all kinds of them. Things like a drive rack or other rack mount processors. Now you got to be careful. Some of these don't have a lot of memory, so they don't have a lot. That takes some processing power to get substantial delays. I forget what the max is for ETX, but it's a lot. It's over 100 feet, so maybe even more than that, maybe several hundred feet. But anyway, some of these are very limited. You can delay like 5 feet or something, So just look to see what your capabilities are within that piece of gear.
Sure. Okay, excellent. Let's continue on and look at more graphics.
Yeah, let me see what else I got in here. Let's see. We did the beamforming. Let's take a look at cardioid real quick. This is another way we could solve that sub against the wall problem. Is maybe we we don't want to have the sub against the wall. We just don't want to have any sound coming off the back of our sub. So there's a great show we did on cardioids, and I think you should just go watch it. I won't repeat it, but basically to say the reason this is called a cardioid pattern is it's a heart-shaped pattern. And what we can see is that there is very little bass on the back side of this, and all the bass is coming out the front side of this. And the 2 yellow devices here represent 2 speakers, 2 subwoofers, and then the triangles represent amplifiers. That's a schematic symbol for an amplifier. And you can see here we've got some delay processing and a polarity switch. And here again, you can see spacing driver to driver, in this case 2 milliseconds, so there's our delay time.
Sure.
So here we can see some examples. Again, blatantly stole this from EV. Thanks, guys. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, you're welcome. All right. Yeah. So anyway, it's too late. I already stole it. I know they don't care.
Not so much.
They're big on education. So. But what we can see here is there's 3 different ways that this cardioid can work. Now, it's very, very important to note that you can't just take subwoofers and put them this way and have this work. You have to have the processing in the box or in a DSP to do this. It's nice when the box has built-in DSP to do it, but if not, then you can use an external processor and do this as well. I've had to do it the hard way, and it's just way easier to click a button on the box because I don't have to do any math. But so here we can see we can do it with 2 speakers, or we can do it with 3, and there's a couple different configurations for how we can do this. But as you can see in the red letters, it says this is the audience direction, and then behind it is the rejection direction. So we won't have that low frequency coming off the back, so we won't have that reflection and cancellation off the wall. So that's one other way we can solve it.
So in 2 of those pictures, you were using 2 forward, 1 back, one obviously, 1 forward, 1. But between those 2 setups, a stacked setup and a horizontal setup, does one have a greater sound response than the other?
No, but remember when we, if we want our pattern to be wider, we stack our boxes higher. If we want our pattern to be narrower, we put our boxes wider. With 3 boxes, the effect is fairly minimal, but I think aesthetic and placement would be my determining factors here. It's a little bit more extreme when we saw a line of 12 subwoofers lined up there,
And when you're doing 12 subwoofers, are there ever times you are using a cardioid type technology with that many subs?
Sure, absolutely. If I've got a row of subs in front of the stage and the band is like, hey, I don't want that on the stage because I can't hear my in-ears, I can't think, I can't even, my eyes won't even focus, because we're talking about some serious SPL. You can literally make their vision blurry. And if you're a Grammy winner, you can say, no, I don't want that.
Sure.
And it's my job to figure out how to not have that happen. So say, yes, sir, yes, ma'am, you got it. We'll do it your way. You write the check, the end, right? So, and in fact, I was just doing a thing, a festival, and we had minimal directional control in the subs. We were more worried about the audience, given the nature of the show. So there was a bit more low frequency bleed on the stage, but certainly a manageable level. But one of the earlier acts that day was a fairly local band, had not played on a lot of big stages. And as the monitor engineer was setting up their mixes, they said, any way you can take some of that kick drum out of the monitors? And he goes, no, because I don't have any in there. You're just getting that massive amount of sound energy that's being produced for front of house.
It's coming back at you.
For a country mile, people's beers are going to jiggle, so you're just going to have to live with that. And it's funny because we're 100 feet away, but I can sort of overhear this conversation from the monitors because it's early in the day and there's no other sound. And he shoots me a look and I'm just giggling back there. I'm like, yeah, you got to deal with it, buddy. I don't. So they're going to yell at you all day and it's not even your fault. Anyway, the national acts, of course, are totally cool. They're used to that sort of thing. So here's another way we can do this. I'm going to show you a couple more pictures, and we can curve the arrays. And I got 2 examples of this. Here we can see the same subs, no time difference, but you can see what happens to our pattern when we just arch these a little bit. So only difference between these 2 is we've arched this.
So the red are at 60 hertz. We almost make a little wider. And then as we go down, it becomes narrower again.
Yeah, so, I think the idea here is depends on where your audience is at, right? Let's look at another one. It's a little bit more extreme. If I can get the right picture up. Here we go. I think I did. There it goes. So here we can see we've got a stage in the middle now, and we've just tapered these on the ends a little bit. And you might think that's counterintuitive, but you can see how it actually really cleans things up. Certainly gives us some wider coverage and a little bit smoother coverage. We don't have those, these right here in this area here, that's a massive null. So here you've got bass, here you've got bass, here you don't have that bass at 40 hertz, right? So, now, would you notice because you've got some red there and that sort of thing. But the point is, those are those nulls and power alleys we're talking about. And I don't know about you, but I'm pretty excited to actually draw this live. So,
yeah, that's very interesting.
Yeah, it's, let me just see if I got any other graphics I want to share before we go to the live. And then we can try some things if people want to, let's just dive into it here. So I'm going to share an acoustic modeling program.
Michael, I think your question was answered with that last drawing, which with the delay, I think you're probably you saw it about the time your question hit. Michael was asking with 6 subs if you did a kind of a curve or like your angle that you just showed. That's what he was wondering about.
So let's put some subwoofers in. So what we have here is we've got an arena. Okay, we just got this little like just for sense of scale.
Oh, I think we were there. Isn't that the one where we went and played that game? Yeah, great.
It surely is. So let's start with 1 sub. And there's my 1 sub. And we can see, and I'm going to zoom in a little bit here. Maybe not quite so much. Here we go. Let's move it over here. Just going to look in between screens to see what y'all can see. So we can see my 1 sub pattern is fairly radial, as it were, right? So let's add 2, and we'll put them oops, goodness, that's not what I wanted to do. Put them basically side by side. I've set the program to automatically update, so it's going to do that, but I wanted to speed things up. So now we can see that if I put these 2 side by side, they're basically acting like one, you know? But as I talked about, you know, we could make it 4, and I guess go about 11. And we can see that now our pattern is starting to tighten, right? See how that's getting a little bit, it's not as round as it was.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And if we kept adding subs to that, we would see that increasingly happen. So let's see. Got to kind of guess the distance here. Close enough. And it is adding delay down here. Do you see this?
Oh yeah, there's that delay you were talking about. That it's trying to
it's like, keep you don't want to do that. I'm like, yeah, but I do. And see what happened when I took that delay out? Did you guys see what happened there?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely
the
narrowed.
Software's like, fine, moron, we'll do it your way.
And you're going to see that the people on the sides we want a refund.
So let's take these out, and let's just go with 2 subs. And I'm going to zoom out so we can see this a little bit better. But what we've got now are 2 subs essentially 20 feet apart.
Okay.
So
very common. This is a very common DJ setup distance, 20 feet apart.
Yeah. So look what happens. Here we have our 2 subs side by side. No delay settings or anything. You know, no polarity invert. None of the things that we could do to. Now, for those that are wondering, this is an X12 128 sub, which is what we use at concert shows. I can't model anything else, really, I'm sorry, other than concert tour subs in this program, because it's all the program is built for. So if you're saying, hey, show me what my, you know, whatever 12-inch sub is going to do, I can't. But the principles are the same. So
yeah, it's just maybe not quite as much thump and as much hit, but it's still going to be producing the same spaces, covering that.
And you'll notice down here too, by the way, you can see we can change the symmetry, and you'll notice I have the option here even to make these arched already. Now two sub arch is not all that great.
Yeah, it's not that noticeable.
The program says, hey, that's an option we can do to solve your problems here. So let's just move these apart. What do you say, 10 feet?
Yeah, I think with a lot of DJs with their table and such, they're probably 12 feet. Let's go 12. I think 12 is
12 feet, okay. And you can see what happened here. What a difference. Only thing we did was move them. What a massive difference.
Yeah.
Now we could try, goofing off with some things like adding some delay down here. They're on the same drive channel. Can't do that. That's not, there we go. So we could say, well, what if we did that? Or what if we put, some delay in here? Or, I'm just kind of goofing off and throwing numbers at it, See, well, what happens? Does anything happen? It is on this. It's never mind. You're not going to get to see this because it's. Stop it. Program is really trying hard to save me from myself.
There we go.
So now you can see what happens if I put 5 milliseconds delay on one sub and not the other. We got a ridiculous looking pattern now, right? I love how the program is constantly trying to prevent me from...
It's like, you don't want to do it. No.
So yeah, don't do that.
I'm going to save you.
So yeah, which is great because honestly, the program's job is when I get into a building, I have a very limited amount of time before the riggers are putting points in the air, before the stagehands are unloading the truck and we're setting the PA. I have a very limited amount of time to put this information in here, and the software says, do this, right?
So Ben, can you do a like 2 subs on each side at that distance?
Oh, of course I can. So I've stacked these 2 high.
Yes.
Is that what you wanted? Yep.
2 high, same 12 feet apart, and we're still having the same type of cancellation or
Yeah, and you can see now I've put these much tighter together, and I've made it 12, and you can see how my pattern is fairly directional, right? It's narrow because our array is wider than it is tall.
the software is putting delay back in again. I see.
Yep.
Yeah.
But now, you see, we build our wall of subs. You know, we can start to see the things that are happening here. You know, and oh yes, and it's putting delay in again. Thank you for that. Stop it. Stop it.
No, as soon as you start knocking the delay out, look at how it narrows it right there by the speakers.
Yeah, so we can see how, and here you can see, look at this, how ridiculous that looks. You know, and so if you're standing here in this black part, you're not getting much bass at all, despite the fact that there is a, you know, body altering amount of power in front of you.
Yeah. 20, 30 feet ahead of you, it's like this mind blowing amount of power, and you're like sitting there, what bass?
Right.
When are they going to
Exactly.
drop them? Yeah, drop it in, man.
So, you know, I mean, again, I think this is just a really good way to, you know, look at, you know, well, what could we do to try to solve some of these problems? You know, do we care? In this case, the dance floor is maybe in front of us. We don't care. We're okay with this, you know? However, it's also important to note that we are only modeling 60 hertz right now. So just keep this in your mind.
Okay.
And let's go to 100 hertz, and you'll notice how that changed dramatically.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Because frequency, you know, dictates wavelength, and wavelength dictates the place where the interaction occurs, right?
Wow. So let's look at you talked a little bit about the kind of the curving or the arching of the subs in that when we have them together tight.
Yeah, well, let's do that. So now it's got a little bit of an arch here to it. If we let's see if I can do this. Okay, I need to do a little bit of homework here. Sorry. We got subs on top of each other where they can't really exist in space.
Mm-hmm.
And we have delay settings in here as as well. So if we put all these on drive channel 1, that'll clear all that out too. It'll make it all the same. And come on, there we go. So I think the point is you can see how wide the coverage here for the audience is. We can start to do things purposefully, right? Like what would we do? If we needed to cover this arena, which we do, right? So, the software is just going to give us the ability to see what the consequences of our actions are.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas obviously, if we do this, that's not very ideal.
Yeah, for sure.
Arena. To have 2 subs 44 feet apart is not all that ideal.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not necessarily uncommon.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
A lot of times stages are 60 feet wide. So here we've got 2 subs 60 feet apart, left and right. So in this case, you can see where a left and right array, let's just say that, even if we've got, 3 subs on a side, it doesn't really change anything. You know, this is not great coverage at 100 hertz. Now, if we come back down to 60, you know, we're going to see how that changes. It's still not great coverage by any means, but you know, we can see where that effect is. So we say, well, what are we going to do to make this coverage good? People bought tickets. You know?
For sure.
DJs, of course, are operating much more in, like you said, the 12-foot realm. But anyway, the fundamentals of physics are the same here.
Yes.
You know?
Would it matter, as Philip mentioned, talking about different bandpass and folded horn and different types of subwoofer technology out there, does that change any of what we're observing here for the radiating of the sound waves?
Well, sure, because it affects how the frequencies exit the box. So, you know, that's going to have some effect on it, but most subwoofers have a largely radial pattern. So, you know, we have to start with that information first, right? You know, I don't know how to make a simple answer to that, other than to say, let's just assume that all subs operate similarly because we're close enough, you know. You know, to his point, you know, folded horn, you know, manifolded boxes, that sort of thing, all kinds of, you know, bandpass. There's all kinds of ways where that impacts those, but we're starting to move into a different realm of headaches here.
Sure.
You know.
So in our venue, what would be the optimal setup then with that situation? Would it be to have them in front and kind of do the arch? Would it have been to put on the sides and do a tip out? What would have been the most optimal to get our sound coverage in that arena?
In that arena, I would probably have done several stacks and then delayed them.
Okay.
You know, several stacks kind of moving across the front and putting some delays on there, kind of spreading those out.
And when you refer to a stack, are you talking like 4 8 subs in a stack, or like a 2 high by 3 or by 4 wide, like for 8 subs there, or what would you do?
Well, let me just show you. Come on. All right, I just got to fix my, here, I'll get a screen share going too so you guys can see what I'm doing. So here we can see how now I have bass basically everywhere in the arena.
Sure.
Maybe where I don't want it too, because of course on my stage back here, I'm also getting it, right? But you know, I've got 6 subs going across, 1 high is all. So there are just 6 subs here. So if I make it 12, then I'm going to get even more SPL. Trying to keep this so we can sort of see the color differences. And it's already done my delay settings for me, which was nice of it. But, you know, again, the differences are a lot less pronounced. You certainly have some extreme hot spots right up here. Let me see if I can get this to go. We're not going to get it to go. All right. Well, maybe there we go. Shoot. Anyway.
What kind of a distance are we looking at between the speakers in that situation?
Well, the whole line is 40
feet. Okay, so 40, and then you've got 6 of them. So,
yep. Now I just made it 50, and you can see what happened here. Suddenly, I kind of lost my sides. You know, but you know, for the most part, my audience, and again, this isn't what I would say is, hey, this is great. Let's go with this. But we can see how much better it was than what we were looking at earlier, where we had no coverage out there. You know?
So now, if we change it from straight to arch it, what does that?
We're going to see a huge difference here right now.
Okay.
You know, but we will see a little bit. You know, maybe a little bit of smoothing, if anything. You know. But what's notable here again? Let's take these delays out. and we can see how that impacts the pattern.
Yeah, there we go.
So, same setup. Just took out the delays, and the people on the sides are kind of getting ripped a little bit. They're kind of getting cheated.
They're not hearing.
Anyway, and then there's more things going on here that we haven't talked about, like the aligning with the tops and that sort of thing. I think it's probably a big ask in 20 minutes to say, how do I set up subs for a concert? But
yeah, no, that gives us an idea, and I think the real big takeaway for a lot of people is that by putting those speakers or the subwoofers when we need that thump, putting them out there may not be our best option. We might be best off putting them together in the middle and having our tops, but then keeping our tops, making sure that our tops are in line with the front of the cones of the sub, and for that alignment, potential alignment issue.
Yeah, but I want to add to that. I agree with that, but I want to add, people ask me this question all the time, so where's the best place to put my speakers? And of course, it wouldn't be a show if I didn't say it depends.
Wow, it took 54 minutes to get that out of you.
I made you wait for
I
it.
tried so hard early to get...
We haven't done a show in like 6 months, so But if you're using like a top over sub configuration or a column array like an Evolve, and you're saying, well, I don't have that option, I can only put my subs left and right, it's okay. Yeah. It's particularly, you got your Evolves 6-8 feet apart, 10 feet apart. We know that we're going to have a narrowing of the pattern, but it's not, first of all, you're not trying to fill an arena. If you're trying to fill an arena with Evolves, you're doing it wrong to begin with. So that's an entirely different show. Have the right rig for the gig, right? But when we think about the size and the coverage of most wedding dance floors, where we want that low frequency, all the factors have to go into play here. The structural, the acoustic, and also the aesthetic. Does it look ugly? Well, if it does, maybe you have to make some compromises.
For sure.
Right? Particularly at a wedding. There's greater factors here. At a concert, the sound is right up there with, probably number one concern.
Yeah.
I can't put speakers on top of the stage blocking the lead singer, though. That's a no-no.
Yeah, that would be bad.
So there's always these considerations. And structural. I can't put speakers where I can't support speakers. How much weight can the grid hold if I'm flying them, whatever, and engineering is a series of compromises. So anyway, I guess the point is, if you're using top over sub or using a column array, it really isn't the end of the world. But I think the takeaway is that as you walk around the room and you hear these nulls and these power alleys, you can make purposeful and constructive changes, and you can affect that. And you can say, Evolves have delays on them. So, you can say, wow, I now have a little bit more control over the dominion that I'm operating in.
For sure. Yes, and as you were saying, is that sometimes, what sounds good, and you play with it a little bit.
Yeah, but sounds good, it is good, Or as I think it's appropriate to end the show with a Neil quote. Neil came up to me one time as we were mixing a concert, and he says, "Man, that really sounds good. I wouldn't have done it that way, but it sounds good." So,
there we go. There's a little that offhand passive
just a little
aggressive
backhand, But I think that's the thing, right? There's different ways to make the soup,
Yeah.
Physics is hard and fast. The program obviously is working in the realm of pure physics, but the program is only operating into one set of parameters, and it's just giving you its guidance. But many times me and the program kind of go head to head a little bit, and I'm like, no, we're doing it my way, and then it says, fine, here's your result, So.
Here's what you're going to get. Wonderful, Ben. Thank you very much. We are running out of time here, so we're going to wrap things up for tonight. Thank you guys for being with us this evening. We had a great crowd. We had some good comments and such, and I think most every question was answered at some point in time with the show shortly after. So what kind of sub is best for ice cream? Okay.
Every sub is good for ice cream, and every ice cream is good for subs. Yeah. So viewers, thanks so much for watching. Obviously, I'm hurting today, and it meant a lot that you guys were here with me today. I appreciate that. So thanks for watching. Back next week with another something.
I don't remember. We'll have to check the schedule. But yes, we've got our fall planned. So Tuesday Nights with Ben Stowe is back, and we'll have some fun this fall. So up next, the Tuesday Night Music Show, Brian, Jay, and Howie are going to be doing the recording of that show. You can watch that it's a Zoom room, DJNTV.com/chill. They'll be starting it up here in just a few minutes. So go jump in there, shut your camera off and mic off, and you can listen. And then once that's done, you can jump in there, and it becomes this big old chat room that you guys can have some fun in tonight. So, gang, we're going to bid you adieu, and we'll see you next Tuesday night. Thanks.